Oh, oh my God. Hi, everyone. Excuse me. I've been rushing around like a mad thing all day. Hey, Craig, you're the first one to log in. We've missed you. Um, Ready for a bit of rough play? Excellent. Me too. Hello, Alison. I know it's very exciting. Peter and Karen, nice work. Cotty and John, g'day. Oh, good on you, Cotty. You've done the beetroot risotto and mushroom ragu. How delicious. Paul and Roz, lovely to see you. Emily and Kevin, good to have you with us again. How lovely. Welcome, everyone, to our special. Jeff just got back from work. Hello, how you going? Good to see you. And I think we've got a few other people online. I don't know if my cousins managed to tune in, but if so, hello, Fraser and Grayson and Janet Cliff and all the fam. Hope you're watching. If you're not, that's okay too. I didn't manage to get my beetroot risotto made, which I was really sad about because I love that recipe. And it sounds a bit weird, but it's really delicious. But I did make a mushroom risotto the other day, so I've got a little bit of leftover of that. I've also got some show and tell for you. And grilled mushrooms and prosciutto, yum. Look at that for a beautiful bunch of grapes. That is Garden Vineyard Pinot Gris. So that's picked today, just arrived. You can see where it's been sitting with a bit of juice on it. It's all shiny. And the bits that aren't shiny, that's our wild yeast. Nice stuff. Hello, Sarah. How are you and all the tricks? So we're not tasting Pinot Gris wine tonight, but I just thought that was such a beautiful little bunch that I had to share it with you. And it will be delicious as well. Hello, Nareem. How are you? They do look perfect, don't they, Alison? Very excited. Such a good colour. And yes, and this is the thing that we keep talking about, colour in Pinot Gris grapes. You could mistake that almost for Pinot Noir if you didn't look closely, couldn't you? They've got, when the sun shines through them, they've got this kind of coppery note to them, which is rather lovely. But yeah, really beautiful. All right, let's get into the wine for tonight. Oh, God, it's been another week. It's been a busy one. Let's get some wine in the glass. So 2021 Rough Play Pinot Noir, I present to you the newest of our experimental wines. This is a Jeremy special. So I hope Jeremy is going to be able to join us. I'm not sure. He might even still be out tidying up and getting organised with the end of the day today. He's had a busy day. So I love the fact that our little duck on this one is turquoise. He looks almost like a peacock when you can't see his tail, and then you know he's a duck. But it's the closest thing to a peacock wine that we've got so far, and so Reggie should be very pleased. We might have to get a peacock tail on the back of it if we ever get this wine to exactly where we want it to be. So Rough Play Pinot Noir, I'll explain all. Let's get this in the glass. Oh, Cotty, that is a very interesting comment and very good point. Craig, the nose is bonkers. Bananas, so much going on. Excellent. It has got a great nose. So why is it called Rough Play? You've probably read the label by now. And we try and put a bit of information on these labels to try and explain to you what we're doing with our experiments. And this fruit was foot stomped for about an hour, or as long as it takes to drink a couple of gin and tonics. We destemmed it into fruit vats, and we then got in and stomped around on it and squished every single berry with our toes. We made sure our toes were very clean before we got in as well. I have to say, it's very therapeutic stomping on grapes for an hour. I've got to say, it was in 2021, the fruit was pretty cold to start off with, because this year we've just done the Rough Play Pinot for 2023, and I said to Jeremy, I'm really not looking forward to that cold fruit, and he's like, don't you worry about it. I warmed things up and I got the fruit out early this morning, so it's warmed up nicely to almost 12 degrees. It was it was much more bearable than it's been in the past. It was actually quite pleasant. Samantha, hello everyone. Who have we got? Chris and Donna. G'day, Donna and Chris. Lovely to meet you. Welcome to Drinks with Kate. All right. So yes, there's a bit of development of colour because of, and so what happens when you stomp on grapes for an hour? They react with the oxygen in the air because they're not fermenting, and we're not protecting them from oxygen with CO2 or anything like that. So they react with oxygen in the air. The colour changes from quite bright purple to a sort of brick browny garnet colour, which you can see in the finished wine as well. As I say, ideally all of the grapes are squashed. We also spend quite a lot of time pulling any leaves or any stalks that might have got through the machinery into the thing. So it's very pure. It's very pure, just grape juice and skins and pips and some feet. So, Craig, you're just leaping ahead with all of the questions. So, yes, so what does this do? Well, it obviously extracts tannin and colour and flavour from the skin in a very intense and fast way. And the other thing that's important to sort of just keep in mind is that there are some components in the skins, both tannin, phenolics, colour, flavour, that are water soluble, and some that are alcohol soluble. So when we make Pinot Noir the normal way, there's usually some alcohol and increasing levels of alcohol in the ferment as we're moving the skins through the wine. And so we're pulling out more of the alcohol soluble colours, tannins, and flavours from the skin. With this wine, we do all of the extraction over that 1 hour of foot stomping. So we're extracting all the water soluble things in the skins. So you're getting an increase in tannins, but you're getting slightly different shaped tannins. You're getting slightly different aromatics and slightly different flavours, and that development of colour as well from that sort of rapid and vigorous oxidation of the fruit and the juice. So it's quite an interesting way to make wine. It's very labour intensive. We were talking because we had some helpers. We had some helpers on the weekend when we were doing it. So Peter, who is here from America for vintage, came on his day off just to sort of see what was going on and have a bit of a stomp. And who else is here? I can't even remember. Oh yes, Nigel. Are you online yet, Nigel? Nigel had a stomp, and so did James. So our two Celador boys got their feet into a bucket of grapes this year. So we were talking about, Nigel said, what if you decide that you like this wine best? Is this how we're going to make all of our wine from now on? And Jeremy and I both said, I don't think so, because it's really a lot of work, and you can't foot stomp a bigger quantity as efficiently as we do. So it's got to be a small quantity that we work really intensively with. So by its nature, it's very labour intensive and time consuming. So other things that we do are also labour intensive and time consuming. If it turns out to be the best wine we've ever made, then, we'll probably make a bit more this way, but who knows? At the moment, we haven't tasted it, so we don't know. And it's so young. It's hard to tell. So Frodo and Polly were not helping. No, we kept dog feet a long way away from it, and everyone gave their feet a really good scrub before they went into the fruit. So everything was lovely and clean. Alison was all wine in the olden days made this way. Possibly. But you guys are like asking questions that are sort of answering what I'm about to say. It's amazing. So John was asking whether the grapes were destemmed. So yes, these grapes were destemmed, which they wouldn't have done in the olden days, and it would have been much more painful stomping on whole bunches, because the wooden part of the bunch of grapes is quite prickly when you stand on it. So it's sort of modern winemaking with the destemming, old-fashioned technique with the foot stomping. It's kind of a combination of everything. And it reminds me of that episode, and it's what I think everyone when they haven't learnt anything about winemaking. Or so everyone thinks that winemaking is all about. And if you thought this is what was my winemaking was all about, then you're not on your own. And I think it's really sweet. But it's that I Love Lucy episode when she gets in the grapes and stomps around, and everyone has a good old laugh. It's really, I think she actually expresses the sensation of it really well through her physicality and her face in that episode, because it's cold and it's sticky and it's slippery, but it also kind of feels really nice. And so it's sort of a bit gross, lovely at the same time. Emily, you've seen photos of your great-grandmother stomping grapes after school in Italy. So yes, a lot of people did. It was the easiest way to get juice out of grapes is to use your feet. And in fact, even today, when they're making port in Portugal, Kevin, hello, excellent. When they're making port in the old-fashioned traditional way, which a lot of people still do, then they get into the concrete lagars. They're like sort of troughs that the grapes get put into, and they foot stomp, but they foot stomp them with hobnail boots on. So they want to actually crush the pips a little bit and get even more extraction than we do with our bare feet. We don't want to crush the pips, and we figure that our feet aren't hard enough to actually crush many, if any, of the pips of the grapes, but we've got enough weight behind us and enough foot power to mush up the grapes really nicely. Lots of questions. Peter and Karen, when did they invent the basket press? Don't know, but the first basket presses would have been hand worked. Oh, look, there's Jeremy. Would have been hand worked. Hello, Jeremy. I thought you might have still been here. Cheers. Jeremy's had a big day. We're just talking. I'm getting so many questions. Look, everyone's very. When did they invent the basket press, Jeremy?
There is the most amazing press in a monastery in Burgundy. I'm not sure it's the first, but you know the press at Clovergeau.
Oh yeah, and it's a hand screwy kind of a one.
Giant, huge bits of wood, this like that.
Yeah.
Wide,
that
sort of
Hello,
thing.
Polly.
I'm sure that's not the first invention, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah. So they've had great presses for a long time, but it's always been, well, not so much these days because my wages are so high, but it's usually cheaper to use humans than buy an expensive press to squash grapes.
That's right.
Particularly when you've got peasants kind of scattered around to do the work.
Exactly. The other thing I think is really interesting, presses being the idea of extracting wine, right? Once you've actually fermented it, got that. But this idea of foot stomping is stop, Oscar.
The dogs are very excited to see Jeremy, especially his.
You've talked about obviously the feet and why we do the feet and that sort of thing.
Hey.
Sorry, I've missed everything up to now. I've been cleaning out there.
Yeah, no, we talked about the feet and we talked about how our feet were really clean when we went in there, but we stomped for a long time and that the dogs weren't allowed to help. And we haven't actually talked about what the wine tastes like yet, but we'll get there.
So there's the element of doing that. What we're doing here is a technique to do everything Kate said previously. However, the other thing is actually using your feet, and it had been done in the past, and this is back when we didn't have distemmers. We simply had grapes in the bottom of a barrel, and to extract the juice, you had to jump into your feet to get juice out. Now, that wasn't necessarily, wine. At the finish of wine, when you're actually trying to get wine out of the must that's now alcoholic. The idea of using your feet is the first of presses. The idea of actually getting the wine out of the solids at the end of ferment is primarily the reason you use your feet back then too.
Kevin was saying that he remembers looking at photos of his great-grandmother stomping grapes after school in Italy. So it was definitely a thing that's been done for a long time. It extracts the juice differently, and sometimes if you don't have any other
means of doing it. That's the way
really
you get
good
it
way
out. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Jeff Plans joined us. Hello, Jeff.
You're a bit busy, Jeff. Yeah, got a few things on right now, Jeff.
How's the vineyard, Jeff? Craig wants to know, does juice have any good effects for your skin? A new day spa gimmick. It's weird, and I don't know if we know it wasn't so bad this time, so I think it's temperature relevant.
But acid, there's too much acid in it for good skin.
It makes your feet itchy afterwards, and once you wash all the sort of the sugar and the juice and stuff off, as your feet warm up, then they itch because they've been too cold and they're kind of coming back to life. But yeah, I don't think it's that good for. I don't know if it's that good for your skin, but it's also, I don't think it's terribly bad for you. It's just, it's more about the wine than feet, really, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't do it for.
We don't do it for our own benefit. I did take my nail polish off a couple of days before I jumped in, though, just in case. So there's no nail polish in this wine.
Sorry, I'm squinting. It's hard to read.
People's that Jeff saying hello and then ha 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 and pulling faces.
Aging potential for the wine.
Aging potential for the wine from Anne. Yeah. So we're not sure. I'm not sure. Do you know, Jeremy?
No, but I was opened the bottle while I was out there. I think the tannin's different.
Yeah.
And it's accentuated by the acid that's in that wine, but still the tannin is just so different. So I don't really know what that'll do in the future. We
did talk, Jeremy, about the fact that we're extracting different shaped tannins and flavours because we're extracting them so early that there's no alcohol in the solution. So the water soluble components from the skin are coming out much more easily with that squashing. But we're also giving it a sort of a hyperoxygenation as well because we're splashing it around and the air's there and we're not covering it up with CO2 or anything like that. So you kind of lose some of the fruitiness by oxidizing the juice, and the juice goes quite sort of brick coloured in at the end of the hour of stomping. But I know it's good, isn't it, Nareem? It's nice to have someone else to interview, especially when he knows what he's talking about. I can just sit back and drink the wine.
No, I'll just add to that the fact that you get all this tannin out in a juice solution early. Tannin chemistry is nuts. It's well beyond the normal our knowledge base at the moment. We don't really understand how it all works. We know little bits about polyphenolics and things like this and how they jump together and why they jump together, but it's a mass of uncharted chemistry that we just don't have A, the researchers involved into understanding, but B, probably the need to necessarily understand it, other than that tastes different if you extract all that before ferment versus if you did the same thing after ferment. It's just not the same wine.
Yeah.
So, I think, it's always magical, the stuff you don't know.
Craig's pointed out that the cherries are really tart in this, and I agree. It's got this real kind of mouth-watering sour cherry kind of a fruit explosion in the mouth, which, as Jeremy said, there's quite a lot of acid in this wine, and so that's adding to that. But also I think that the purity of that fruit is really lovely. On the nose, I don't get as much fruit. I get more sort of violet floral kind of aromas. As it opens up, it's hello. Hi, Nigel's here now. Good. And Cotty's, the wine is big and light at the same time, which I think is a really good, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's a really good description of the wine because it is big and it's got a lot of flavour, but it doesn't weigh heavily on the palate. Those tannins, as you say, are a different shape. There's a lot of tannin, but they're not big, heavy, savoury tannins, are they?
No, it's all this light little thing that runs the whole length of the palate.
Craig would like to know about the vineyard makeup, Jeremy, for this wine. I'm not wearing very much vineyard makeup today, but
it's quite good.
Thanks.
Shush. It's parcel of fruit that we've had for a long time from the garden vineyard. It's not the single garden vineyard that you normally see that comes from the back block. Whoops, almost lost Kate forever. It's a different facing slope on the garden vineyard, and it faces northeast. It's smaller than the back block. It's I think about 24 rows, something like that. But we've come to understand that the middle of that block is far superior to the outskirts of it, in that the outskirts are governed by an influence from driveway and quite a drying area where there's a tree line as well. And on the other side is actually a modification to the clones in that block. The last few rows are actually planted to a completely different clone, and that doesn't seem to produce wine of as high quality as the middle of this block. So the middle 2/3 we actually pick for this wine. We take that through separately. That has been in the winery for a very long time. We've mucked around it for a while, but it seems to lend itself well to doing things with the tannins. So that's why we chose it to do this sort of thing. I think we've been I don't know how long we've been doing this, a couple of years.
Yeah, well, this is 2021.
Yeah.
So this was the first one, I believe.
We still had a barrel or two in the background prior that did not make it as a wine itself.
Didn't pass.
No, it was just we were just playing.
Yeah.
So we've been foot stomping for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting to see what it makes a great wine, that particular block, but it lends itself again to producing this wine that we can play with the tannin and see it in a different form.
You'll see, in fact, I think that you could almost see a theme running through our 3 experimental wines, that it's about tannin. I mean, with the Pinot Gris on skins, it's about extracting tannin in a grape that's seen as a white grape variety with that much colour in it. So what a waste. What a waste to throw all those skins out to make white wine. The Rough Play Pinot, what's the other one called?
Magic Stalks.
Magic Stalks is all about the tannins that we get from the stalks when we treat them in a different way from our other Shiraz. So we're obviously obsessed with experimental sort of tannin things, but it's because, as Jeremy said, we don't really fully understand the science behind it. So by playing with different winemaking techniques, we get to sort of experiment with what happens and how these tannins express themselves, which I think is really, really cool. Craig says he loves inter-vineyard variation, always amazing.
Yeah, and how deep do you go? I mean, you go from the top of this block to the bottom. There's a fall of, 15, 20 metres. How different would the top be to the bottom? You've got to stop somewhere. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing to see the variation between, we do make those 2 wines separately and see it. And the wine is a standalone wine, the outside bit by itself, but it doesn't have the finesse of tannin that this does. No.
And Peter and Karen are saying, so I don't know. I know that Connie and John have got the beetroot risotto. Peter and Karen have got beetroot. I don't know how many of the rest of you have got beetroot, but it sounds like a slightly weird, and not everyone likes beetroot in the world. And fresh beetroot is really different from canned beetroot. So, again, lots of variations of things. But the reason I suggested a beetroot risotto is partly because I love that recipe. It's really tasty, and you do have to either wear gloves or cope with the fact that you have beetroot stained hands for a little while. So it's a bit messy to make, but it's really good. If you didn't do beetroot risotto, mushroom risotto is also good. I think that earthy, savoury umami flavour that you get in beetroot and in mushroom, but beetroot's a bit sweeter and a bit brighter, brings out that cherry flavour and also the savouriness of the wine, which I think is pretty lovely. Craig did sausage rolls a little overpowering. I agree. I think roast beetroot. So if you did like a roasted beetroot and goat's cheese sort of salad would be lovely as well. Those sort of flavours would be awesome. That recipe, Cotty, is, well, it's mine. I copied it out of a magazine about 20 years ago, but it's out of my handwritten recipe book.
If you rewrote it, it's technically yours.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from originally, so I'll claim it. It's probably Jamie Oliver's or someone like that. It was before Yotam Ottolenghi got famous, but yeah, I think it is a lovely recipe, and it's a great recipe to go with this wine. And the reason, Craig, I think the sausage rolls would have been a bit overpowering, and it's funny because I still think, I think of Magic Stalks, and I think of Rough Play, and I think, oh, maybe they're both going to be, good with sort of, richer, fattier sort of food. But the tannin shape that we get from this is so different from the Magic Stalks, because the Magic Stalks is all about stalks and is about carbonic maceration, and again, it's early extraction, but it's early extraction of different tannins, and also we're talking about Shiraz versus Pinot Noir. So I think the sausage rolls would have been great with Magic Stalks, and when we do Magic Stalks next box, I think. Okay. Anyway, sometime in the not too distant future, go back to your sausage rolls and have that with your magic stalks, and I think you'll be very happy. Alison did the potato tart tartare last week, and it was fab. Yeah, it is a very cool recipe, that potato recipe. A drinks with Kate recipe book you could all throw in, absolutely. So I have had recipes sent to me. Sam sent me some recipes last year or the year before, which were gorgeous. So yes, if anyone has recipes that they want to send me to go with wines coming up, then I'm absolutely open to that. I think a drinks with Kate recipe book would be lovely. It'd be better to have a Jill's recipe book, but she's being very reticent in putting that together.
I'd buy them both.
Yeah, cool. You'd have to have like your wine matches with them as well.
One more thing that I'd just add to this wine too, and you talked a lot about how it was made and that sort of thing. We're not the only ones playing with this. There's people that play around Australia with foot stomping and extraction early and working early and that sort of thing. But there's a researcher based in Tasmania who has played for the last 5-6 years now, looking at using a giant commercial bar mix. You know. Oh yeah, like it's seriously,
blender.
it's just like one that's on steroids, and it's about this big, and you hold it up here.
Yeah.
And they were using that on Pinot pre-ferment to try and lacerate. I'll say lacerate because it tried to actually open layers of the skin of the Pinot so that colour could be expelled out of the cells. And it's almost mimicking foot stomping. It was just a commercial way of doing it, because this is the other thing. This wine we only make, a barrel or 2 barrels or something, because 6 hours, that's a lot of gin to drink to get this done. For such a small quantity, you could never do it.
We don't have any peasants that we can just put in the.
It's just too hard to do this sort of labour-intensive winemaking on a commercial scale. So this is the idea of doing exactly that, smearing the skins open with a knife as such, and opening up not only the tannin and releasing tannin, but also the colour. And having that interaction early before there's any alcohol present. So if you're interested, Google. I'll find her name. I've forgotten her name now. That's terrible. Richard says he might. Another research, but the same node, absolutely. So ultrasound and stuff like that, microwave. They were sending Pinot through microwave. There's some crazy stuff going on. We have incredible research going on in Australia at the moment for these sorts of things. But unless you can bring it to a commercial means where you can say to someone, okay, you can make great wine like this. However, if you want to make 50 tons of it, you need to send it through this microwave to make it happen, because you cannot have 500 people stomping. That's at least a pallet of gin.
That's a lot of gin to make a little bit of wine, isn't it?
Exactly. So anyway,
crazy.
I'm going to leave you to it. I'm going to get back out there. I just thought I'd do a cameo.
Awesome. Lovely to see you.
Bye, everybody.
Go do some work. Thanks, Jez. That was awesome. Knocking the table. When is this wine available? Asks Cotty. Sort of now. It's in Celador. We can certainly, if you swing by, we can certainly sell you some. We're all a bit under the pump at the moment. We've got tomatoes. Jill and I went up to Shepparton yesterday to pick up tomatoes. So we've got to process our tomatoes at some stage before they go squishy. We've got a pizza event this Sunday, which some of you are coming to. Jeff has always talked about getting people down to foot stomp the grapes, Craig. And if you and Karen want to come down to foot stomp some grapes next year, then you just let us know. I think the big problem at Vintage Time is that, we don't know when we're going to be ready to do it until maybe 24 to 36 hours before we're actually doing it. So the turnaround and kind of notice for people to come and help is usually pretty tight. So Cody, we'll get it up on the shop probably next week, and I'll send out a link once we've done that. But if you want to come and buy it from Celador before that, it's available. We only made a barrel, so it'll come and it'll go. Love you guys to have some in your cellar. It is pretty tasty. And Paul and Roz, I haven't ignored you. I'm thinking about your question. Given the tannins, how will this wine play out over the years? because we haven't made this wine really before, it's a little bit of crystal ball gazing. I think that there's things about this wine that make it really delicious as a young wine. And I think even though there's quite a lot of tannin, the tannins are quite soft and fluffy in a way. So I think drinking it young is very much a thing. I will definitely be putting some away in the cellar to see how it ages. I'd be a little bit worried about too much age and potentially losing some of that vibrancy of fruit and floral notes. But I think that the structure is definitely there. The tannin and the acid is there. So as long as the flavours develop nicely, then it could age really, really well for quite some time. It's a bit of a let's suck it and see. So maybe just buy a dozen and taste a bottle every year, and you'll know in 12 years' time which bottle was the most delicious. I do think that's quite a nice way to do it. Buy a few bottles and taste them over a period of time. Craig, this wine will not go to market as such as it certainly won't go to our wholesalers. It won't be available in restaurants or retail. It'll just be for wine club, drinks with Kate, cellar door customers. So a bit like the Magic Stalks. We only made a barrel of it, so it's in really small quantity. So just for you guys. And it's one of those we've always talked about, for our wine club. And as I've said to you many times before, I consider my Drinks with Kate family as a core part of the wine club. But it's nice to have exclusive wines for you guys. And we have to be practical about it, because we can't make exclusive wines that we only sell to, a few people, and then we've got them sitting around not doing anything and maybe not aging very well, or maybe aging very well. But the idea is to make small quantities of special experimental wines like this, to just, have fun with Drinks with Kate, to offer to you and to the rest of the wine club, and for people to be able to buy through cellar door if they're coming through. Just a little something different, little something special. So Peter and Karen, I agree. It is a super approachable wine. I think just for you, Jackie, absolutely. I think it will go well at cellar door. I think some people will enjoy it. And we probably won't taste it at cellar door that much. We'll probably sell it through the wine club and to you guys, and then whatever's left, we'll kind of take stock and see what's there. And if you want to come and buy some more in 6 months' time and we've still got some, then it'll be there. And when we sell out, we sell out. So I think that's basically the plan with that wine. We're not planning to hang on to it for too long, because we've got other experimental wines to kind of play with after that. So my dog is nuts. My dog is being very annoying. She's barking at Richard until he gives her a cashew nut, and then she eats the cashew nut and then starts barking again. Jackie wants to know how many bottles of wine in a barrel. It's about 24 dozen. Yes, Richard? Theoretically, it'll be 300 bottles. They can't hear you, so I'm just translating. Theoretically, it'll be 300 bottles, but you don't get all of that. So a bit less than 300 bottles, which I think is about 22, 23, 24 dozen, something like that. I only know that because we only made one barrel of Pinot Gris on skins the first couple of years, and I was very aware that we only had a couple of dozens to sell. Craig, I can't tell you anymore. We don't know what we have planned. We're obviously making more Pinot Gris on skins, because that's been a huge success for us. So we're making more of that this year, and that fruit's coming in at the end of next week. We've just foot stomped twice as much Rough Play Pinot on the weekend than we made last year and that we made here. So we'll have a bit more of that to make next year, to make this year and release in a couple of years' time. if we have any other ideas about things, we might do something else experimental, but we've got a few bits and pieces that we're doing. We're doing some trial wines for the Mornington Peninsula Vineyards Association, otherwise known as MP Wines. And that's sort of rootstock trials, which is sort of a bit geeky but fiddly. What might we do with Chardonnay? Well, Craig, our problem with Chardonnay is we don't have enough fruit. So we're really not experimenting as much with Chardonnay outside of the Estate Chardonnay and the Robinson Chardonnay and the McIntyre Chardonnay, because we're getting such tiny quantities that there's not a lot to play around with, and we don't want to take away from the little bit of the special mainstream wines that we make. So maybe down the track, if we get a bit more Chardonnay to play with, then we may very well do something. But I think we're kind of there's less exciting stuff to do with Chardonnay. I feel like we're making, and this is going to sound weird because I feel the same way about our Pinot, but there's always Pinot Noir producers are a bit weirder about, playing around with tannin extraction stuff. Whereas Chardonnay, we're not trying to extract tannins. We have done some little experiments with Chardonnay in the past, and that's been about whether we stir the lees or don't stir the lees while the Chardonnay is sitting on lees in barrel. And we changed the way we make Chardonnay a number of years ago because we discovered that not stirring the lees actually made a finer, more elegant, more delicious wine than stirring the lees, which was actually, we thought it might be the other way around, but doing the experiment, we discovered that it was better not to stir the lees, so we don't do that. We won't be doing an unwooded Chardonnay, Craig. That's a complete waste of that fruit, and the Chardonnay fruit at the moment is far too precious for that. So don't worry, we won't be going down that path. That is a thing of the past. With the Shiraz experimentation wine, that's from a vineyard that we were going to graft the Shiraz over to Pinot Noir, and we didn't do it in time, so we had some fruit to play with, and we're having fun playing with that. So that's how that wine came about. When we have some more Nebbiolo vines in the ground, then there'll be time to play with Nebbiolo. Maybe make a rosé for a couple of years, or if that's, if the fruit's good enough, we might not even need to do that. But it takes a little while to get these experiments happening. Polly, shush, I'm nearly finished. It's nearly done. Polly's a little bit naughty tonight because she's frustrated. She says she's been having a terrible week, far too much winemaking and going away and leaving her inside and not spending enough time talking to her and making sure that all of her needs are met in her own special way. We also have to raise our glasses to our friend Blue, who went for a walk today and might not have come back. So Blue from the Garden Vineyard, who is not a poodle, but we think of him as being poodle-ish. Blue is a short-haired collie, and we love Blue, and he ran away from home today, and luckily he was found by a ranger. So it's very good to hear that Blue's back, and he's somewhere in the background listening to us as well. And I think Sue and Daryl from the Garden Vineyard would be very relieved that today is over. So here's cheers to that. And Alison, after I was ruined by bin 65 in my youth, I re-established my Chardonnay drinking with unwooded. Absolutely, lots of people did, but we've moved past unwooded Chardonnay into sort of a lot of back in the 80s and 90s, and bin 65 was an absolute criminal as far as this is concerned. A lot of Australian Chardonnay was overripe, over-oaked, overworked, and overblown. So a lot of people fell out of love with Chardonnay because of those wines, and a lot of people came back to Chardonnay via unwooded Chardonnay because it was lighter and it had to be fresher to be able. It didn't have any of those other things, winemaking things, to prop it up. But we've also learnt in the intervening time that having older vines helps, reducing crops helps, making sure that you're growing Chardonnay in the right place helps, and using oak and winemaking to enhance the elegance of Chardonnay rather than adding more and more flavours to overwhelm the senses is the way we should be making Chardonnay. So I feel like we've come a long way with Chardonnay over the last 40 years. And I feel like we're kind of in a really good place with Chardonnay. Yes, and there were terrible things done to Chardonnay in the 80s and 90s. Peter and Karen are saying, can you please tell all wait staff that wooded Chardonnay is okay because they keep apologising when we ask if the Chardonnay is unwooded? Well, maybe you need to ask it in a different way. Maybe ask, is the wine barrel fermented? Or, there's not a lot of people making unwooded Chardonnay anymore. That was a thing of the 90s. It was people trying to get away from, oh, it's raining now, and I just remembered I've got washing on the line. That'd be right. Hope all my windows in the car are closed. Oh, that's really heavy rain all of a sudden. I really wasn't expecting that. The Weather Bureau said it was going to come in around midnight tonight. So here's to the rain. Barrel fermented does make you sound educated, Peter and Karen. And I think most Chardonnays, because people don't understand really, and particularly young wait staff don't really understand the difference between wooded and unwooded Chardonnay anymore because they didn't grow up with that whole thing. Exactly, and just ask for Moorooduc Chardonnay at the restaurant. That's absolutely the safest way to go. The Queerleys did make an interesting experimental Chardonnay called I Claudius, which few loved. You were one of them. I can't remember. I do think I remember tasting that wine. I can't remember how it was experimental, but I do know Kath Queerley particularly is not a huge fan of Chardonnay as a grape variety. She's much more interested in, I think she likes it when it's done well, but I think she is critical of a lot of Australian Chardonnays for not being done well. But she is also very interested in, oh, good, Jeff and Sue, got your washing in. Maybe it's not, maybe it won't rain in Mount Eliza. Maybe it's just that little band of weather that comes across Moorooduc. Kath's really interested in aromatic varietals, and she was the first person to bring Pinot Gris to the Mornington Peninsula. She's now doing really interesting stuff with different types of muscat as sparkling wine pet nat. Kevin. It was Kevin, was it, Cotty? Well, Kevin's interested in Chardonnay. I don't remember what he did to it, though, to make it experimental. Was it unwooded or was it skinsy? Or there's a few things you can do to Chardonnay. I like the way we make Chardonnay too much to muck around with it, I reckon. But we need to have a guest wine soon. We've got our new box 2 coming up where we're looking at the 2013 vintage in a few different iterations, as well as a couple of new things. Craig, I'll have a go at that in a minute. Fermented with skins on and unfiltered. Okay. I'm not. I think Chardonnay, skinsy Chardonnay is harder to do well than skinsy Pinot Gris or skinsy Gewürztraminer. I think sort of aromatic and semi-aromatic varieties give a bit more perfume and are a bit more generous in their character when you do skins ferment. But yeah, I don't think I tasted it, Cotty, and I think Kevin and Kathleen make beautiful wines, and they're real crafts people, so I think they do a good job. So Craig, yes, and their labels were amazing and are amazing. Now, Craig has asked, he had an expensive Pinot the other night. The first sip was okay, but fell into an acid pit after that, undrinkable. What do you think was wrong with it? Well, possibly it might have just been having a bad day, because Pinot is fickle like that. But there's a lot of Australian Pinots, and I'm assuming that it was an Australian Pinot, Craig, rather than something from elsewhere. There are a lot of Australian Pinots that are relying much more strongly, or Pinot Noir producers who are looking much harder at getting higher acids and lower pHs in their Pinot, so picking earlier, and not being as interested in building structure with tannin. And I think that those wines can fall over because the acid can be overwhelming. There's a by far side. That's a wine that gets quite a lot of whole bunch ferment, I believe, and it might have just been too young, and it might just have been. I think probably because those wines are good wines, but they are they're moody wines, the far side wines, and they don't appeal to everyone. So maybe it was not to your taste, Craig. I think maybe I've done my job and indoctrinated you into only liking Moorooduc Estate Pinot. So hurrah for me! No, yeah, I don't know. That wine should have been good, but I think the by far wines I like with quite a bit of age on them. A little bit cheeky, I know. But yeah, maybe don't order that wine again if it didn't appeal to you. And this is, we were talking a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure. I think you might have been working, Craig, so you might have missed this conversation about reviewers and famous wines and being disappointed by wines that have had really great reviews, and then buying them and drinking them and them not living up to expectations. And I think that personal preference is a really important thing to bring into any wine and any wine review that you read and take notice of, because just because there's a number of famous wine writers who rate that wine highly doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a wine that you love. And you need to learn about, you need to taste lots of things and think about the wine writers who make recommendations of wines that you end up really loving as compared to recommendations of wines that maybe don't quite live up to your expectations. Richard, did you want to say something? That Richard did make a good point. Those by far wines, I think, are still under natural cork. Was it under natural cork, Craig? Do you remember, or was it under screw cap? If it was under natural cork, it very well could have been affected by the cork, either with some random oxidation or some full-blown cork taint, and that might have spoiled it for you. So yeah, that's a good point, Richard. Thank you for reminding me. I think the Fars do like natural cork still, and sometimes cork taint won't. Yeah, cork. So it might have been a faulty cork, and the problem with cork taint is that it's not always obviously cork taint. It can sometimes just make the wine taste flat and acidic and unpleasant. So if you kept any of that wine, I'd be tempted to take it back to where you bought it from and see if you can swap it for another bottle and say you think it might have been not up to, it was perhaps not a representative bottle. So I think it's nearly 50 minutes. My dog is barking unrepentantly. Cotty, astounded at the number of wine shops and restaurants where the wine is upright with corks and in glaring light. Yeah, absolutely, must affect the wine. Absolutely, yeah. Also, it could have been heat affected if it hadn't been stored properly. So, bye, Alison. Yeah, it could have been heat affected. So who knows? Anyway, I shall leave it at that. I haven't even looked at what we're tasting next week, but it's the last wine in the box, so we should be able to work it out. I will send you a email on Monday to confirm that with a lovely new recipe. I'll see if I think it's an older Chardonnay that we're doing. I think it might be a Robinson Chardonnay. And I've got a recipe that my mum gave me. It's called poulet archiduc, and it's quite rich. I think it will be really fun. So I'll send you that recipe, and we can have a little bit of a cook up. Jill's looking blankly at me, so maybe I've got the name wrong. Anyway, I'll pull it out of the old file, and I'll email you on Monday, and I'll see you all again next Thursday. Thanks so much, everyone. Happy Thursday, and cheers. Bye. Thank you.